So, hi, just some housekeeping. Please feel free to share your suggestions, your questions, your opinions in the comment boxes, both on YouTube and Facebook. Dale will go through the questions in the background. Dale's going to be our IT guy. Just to let you know that we're streaming this live, but also it's going to go on YouTube as well as Facebook so that people who missed it will be able to see it. We're also trying to work on putting this into a podcast, and that will be available. And also, should be about an hour long, but it may go over by approximately 5 minutes or so.
Welcome to P&P with P and P. I'm Pedro Lino. My pronouns are he and him. And I'm wearing a headband, a gray t-shirt, and I have a green background.
I'm Phil Sam, but my pronouns are also he, him, and I'm wearing the exact same t-shirt as Pedro.
Well, we both work for the Love Tank, a non-profit organization promoting the health and well-being of undeserved communities. Underserved communities, please.
Underserved communities, yes. P&P is a space in which we can discuss different topics within sexual health that we don't normally talk about. And when I say sexual health, we mean your state of physical, emotional, and mental and social well-being related to your sexuality, not just the absence of diseases.
We have 6 episodes in total with different, and hope they will not only inform you, but empower you. We will have a guest for most episodes, and today, at the end of the interview, we are going to give away a gift for whoever is willing to participate in a little something we like to call the tier system.
So let's get on to today's topic. So today we're going to talk about vaccinations, but not just any vaccinations, the ones that you typically get in a sexual health clinic. Vaccination is the administration of a vaccine to help the immune system develop protection from disease. This entire episode isn't on the COVID vaccine, so don't worry. In fact, we've been trying our best not to mention anything to do with COVID. It didn't come up once in last week's episode. So we want this hour to be kind of pure escapism. However, we might touch upon it in this episode. So Pedro, what is your favorite vaccination?
I remember when I was a teenager, I was in high school, and my best friends and I decided we should go to the hospital and have the H1N1 vaccine. That was in Brazil, guys, because I'm from Brazil. And I felt so grown up. I was 16. I was like, yeah, I don't need my parents, advice. I know what's good for me. So I'm going with my crew to have a vaccination, excuse me. So there was so much fun at that day, and I felt so proud of myself as well.
It's like
How about you?
It's kind of like that period of time where it's like, when you don't have to go to the hospital with your mom anymore. And it's like I'm So I think mine was also in school. I remember there was a period of time, I think I was in year 7, so like 2001 or 2002, and everyone was getting a BCG, I think it was. Mm-hmm. Tuberculosis, and I remember everyone just punching each other in the arms for a good few weeks. I just remember that. I don't know why this stands out to me.
I love that this punch gives you good memories.
Well, yeah, everyone had swollen arms and like really bad scars and stuff.
Well, we'd like to introduce our guests, Dr. Will Nutland, Dr. Claire Dewsnap, and Dr. Eleanor Drager. I hope I said your surnames correctly, guys. So you got it wrong, please correct me when you're on. But Will, according to his Twitter profile, is a doctor of public health and honorary assistant professor at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, a social researcher, a queer, and the co-founder and director of the Love Tank, where P&P work. Dr. Claire Dewsnap has been a physician in sexual health and HIV for 11 years. This, according to their profile on BASH website, not Twitter this time, okay, guys? Oh, and BASH is British Association for Sexual Health and HIV. And last but not least, Dr. Eleanor Draeger. They are a consultant in sexual health and HIV, and are a medical writing blogger, publications on sex education, sexually transmitted infections, and HPV vaccination. Welcome to the show, people, and thank you so much for joining us. Before you start, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself with a short self-audio description, talking about how you look like, and also introducing your pronouns to us, please. Will, why don't you start?
Hey, good evening. It's so great to be with you again, P&P. Last week's was such an adventure, and it's lovely to actually be a guest this time. My pronouns are he, him. I have a black baseball cap on. I have a pair of spectacles on, a graying salt and pepper beard that needs a bit of a trim, and I have, I was going to go double denim, but I like Phil and Pedro have my long-term on, but I've covered it with a little denim overshirt. Really looking forward to tonight. I'm going to hand over to Claire.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Yeah, so I'm Claire Dewsnap. I'm she, her. I have hair that is in desperate need of a cut. Bright red, frizzy hair that is about 10 times fatter than it normally is. I have my work clothes on. Unfortunately, I don't have the long time no syphilis t-shirt, I'm afraid. I have my little t-shirt and my my statement red eyeshadow.
Nice. Eleanor?
Yeah, so I'm Eleanor Draeger. I'm she, her. I'm wearing a dark grey dress with a light grey cardigan, because I don't have one of those t-shirts. I've only got a tote bag and I couldn't really wear that. Maybe I should have tried. And I've got a big pink necklace and glasses, and I really want to tell you what my hair should look like if there wasn't a lockdown. So it should be short and bright pink, but in fact it's sort of almost a mullet and it's a bit brown. So one day it will be short and bright pink again to match my necklace.
I feel like we can all go around and say what our hair should be.
Yeah. I love the idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so Claire, I'm going to come to you first. How important have vaccines been to global public health?
Well, enormous. I guess that's a really big question, but in many ways. So first of all, vaccines have actually completely wiped out certain infections, like smallpox, for example, and prevented disease, in particular childhood illnesses, was a really big focus for the sort of latter half of last century, and they still continue to develop new vaccines regarding sort of therapeutic vaccines as well as treatment vaccine, as well as prevention vaccines. And there's sort of many of the public health experts would say that vaccination has had a significant impact on life expectancy, which I think we can say it has, certainly in developed countries. Obviously, in some countries, there's still not robust vaccination programs. So, there's still work to be done. In this country, we've been very lucky, haven't we? Because we've been able to access all vaccinations, and in many cases, children are really required to have some vaccines before they can go to school. And now there's a sort of meningitis vaccine wasn't around when I was at university, but I know there was always, every year there was people who got meningitis at their first year at university or their first sort of year away from home. And now, of course, we've got COVID, which is, I shouldn't mention, but it is probably going to help us get out of the lockdown. So it's good. And obviously there's been a big push in sexual health over many years to get vaccines. There are some obvious obstacles to that. And the narrative around sexual health vaccines isn't as straightforward around, say, a vaccine that prevents cancer or infection. But obviously, lots of organisations are there to shout for people who require sexual health, and hopefully BASH is part of that.
Okay. And Will, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I mean, I think Claire's hit the nail on the head. You know, the vaccines have had a huge impact globally. I mean, even across, you know, the generations of us who are on this event tonight. You know, I look back to, you know, 30 years ago, just kind of at the beginning, pre when kind of the main parts of the HIV epidemic hit Europe and North America. And hepatitis B was really common in gay and bisexual men. And whilst hepatitis B is still around, we now have an amazing vaccine for it. And I can't remember the last time, you know, one of my sexual partners or one of my peers told me that they had had Hep B. And, you know, also like Claire, it is great that we have all these vaccines, but there's huge inequity across the globe. People in the global south are less likely to benefit from, you know, great vaccination programs. And also there is huge pipeline development of new vaccines, you know, coming out. Yet lots of those vaccines focus on illnesses and diseases that are predominantly in the global north, whilst ignoring lots of the killer diseases in the global south. You know, we've always taught, Phil, that, you know, if HIV impacted only on white straight people, or predominantly white straight people, would we have a vaccine by now? Look how fast we've turned around COVID vaccine because of, you know, the impact on everybody in you know, Western Europe and North America. And so, you know, there's some great news. Vaccines have been brilliant, yet there's still lots and lots of work to do.
Mm-hmm. And Eleanor, this is kind of a little random in comparison to what we've just talked about, but are NHS sexual health services free for everyone?
Yes, they are. They're free for everyone, and they're completely confidential. So when you go to an NHS sexual health clinic, we don't share any details with your GP or with your school or with your parents, unless we have to share information if there's a safeguarding risk. Sometimes we would have to share that, but we would never do that without telling you. But in terms of free, yes, so all treatment for sexually transmitted infections is free, and treatment for contraception is free as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's say that, oh, sorry. Let's say there's someone that doesn't have that documentation to live in the country. They can, this person is also included in the treatment.
Yes, they are. Yeah, absolutely. They can. We don't ask for immigration documents or passports or proof of ID when someone comes to the clinic. The only time we would ever ask for, in the clinics I've worked in, the only time we would ever ask for proof of ID would be if someone wanted a letter saying, for example, that they were HIV negative. Then we might say, before we give you a letter, we need to know that you are the person you say you are. But if someone wants to come in and you know, because they've got discharge and they want us to have a look at it and diagnose what it is and give them treatment, we just treat them.
Okay.
Yeah, and this information is not shared with the Home Office. Anything's
no, not the Home Office, not the GP, not the rest of the hospital. It's kept in a separate place. Either most places are going online now, and we normally have a different digital system with different numbers and different things. And in fact, that often causes confusion because patients will come and say, "Oh, but the GP checked my full blood count last week," and I say, "Well, I can't see that because I'm not your GP, and the GP can't see your chlamydia result." So, you know, some patients actually are getting to the point now where they're disappointed that we can't see their results and that GPs can't see our results. But that is still the case, that we're very separate in terms of. I mean, we talk to other doctors when we need to, but in general, you can walk in off this. Well, you can't walk in at the moment. You have to phone first because of the unmentionable. But you know, you can just be seen and treated.
Okay. I didn't know there was that disconnect between the GPs and the sexual health doctors in that way, in which the patients would want for both doctors to understand that. I didn't know that. Yeah.
When I do outreach, there's net reach actually, because we use cell phones nowadays. There's a lot of people that ask about that, and they say sometimes that, "Oh no, I'm afraid to access it because they might leak my information," or, you know, I'm illegal here, I can't go. And it's frustrating to see that because you see this lack of trust.
And Pedro, because this is so pertinent to the work that we've been doing at Prepster, it's also the case that because PrEP is available through NHS sexual health services, that anyone can access PrEP in just the same way you can access an STI screen. So sexual health services are free and confidential to everyone, as is PrEP, as is treatment for STIs, as is HIV treatment. So I mean, this is remarkable. There aren't many places in the world where not only is our healthcare free, but that our sexual health services are free for everybody. Long may it last. I know there have been attempts to kind of chip away at that, and lots of people have campaigned to make sure that it stays in place. And for me, as someone who's studies public health, it's absolutely important not only for an individual that service is available for free, but also it's good for our country, it's good for our nation's health and the global health for this to be free.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, and in fact, it wasn't in your question, but I've had some patients say to me recently that they were worried that we wouldn't be there, or worried to tell us that they've had sex, for example, because we've been in lockdown.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important that everybody knows that we've been there all along, even if you have to phone us first, and that we still don't judge you. And we're still going to treat you, even if you have had sex in lockdown with somebody, or that maybe the government rule said not. And I wouldn't want people to be frightened and not come, because
that's brilliant.
Because we're still going to listen to you, and we're still going to treat you confidentially like we always have.
Yeah,
I think that's extremely important, because I think because of the lockdown, I think a lot of people do not realize that clinical services are still available, and because of they don't go. And I know there's been a massive increase in people testing online and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
we were just looking at our figures recently in our clinic, and unfortunately, although there has been a significant increase in testing online, it hasn't, even with that and clinic activity, it hasn't quite kept up with where we were in 2019. So there is possibly either a reluctance to attend because of conversations that might make them feel like they're going to be judged. But also possibly even, services are not back up to running completely normally because some people are still redeployed. But I think it's really important that people contact their services, and now we've got PrEP on the NHS. It'd be absolutely heartbreaking. It's, every diagnosis is now, a failure on our part, because we have to, it's a simple thing that we can do and it's very easy to deliver the care. It's not even complex care. So we have to get people to know that they can come to us and we won't judge them on anything.
And I guess on clinical services, Claire, what vaccines are available for at sexual health clinics for STIs?
So routine clinic, we'd assess everybody for risk, and the things they might be offered are hepatitis B vaccination, hepatitis A. Obviously, there's no hep C vaccine yet, and they would routinely be offered HPV vaccination. And obviously that's Gardasil, so that protects against both genital warts and also certain types of high-risk HPV, which might cause certain types of genital cancers and oral cancers. And what other vaccines?
I appear to have had a power
Eleanor.
cut.
Oh no!
Can you still hear me?
I'm so happy that we can still hear you just fine.
We can hear you.
You can hear, you can see you. I'm happy that your computer hasn't been affected by it, or your internet. You might have, actually.
Very bizarre.
I can see Eleanor's face as it happens.
I can still see you a bit as well, Eleanor. Yes. Sorry, I'll carry on. So HPV, and some clinics will offer flu vaccine and pneumococcal vaccine, but not everywhere offers that, and it depends on the setup you've got with your local HIV clinic. So they're not sexually transmitted infections, but you might offer those to people who have HIV.
I did not.
What is pneumococcal vaccine? What is it for?
So it prevents a bacterial infection, and it can cause pneumonia.
Okay.
So you wouldn't get that if you didn't have HIV, but you might get it from a clinic if you did. Depends on the clinic that you have.
That's interesting. I didn't know that you could get those as well.
Yeah, so we anybody who's HIV positive, we would want them to be regularly vaccinated against flu. And obviously, there's also a call now from Bash and Beaver to have certain people vaccinated for COVID in sexually transmitted infection clinics because they won't have access to GPs. So, for example, if you have HIV but you haven't told your GP that you've got HIV, you would have to access that elsewhere. And certainly in our clinic, we're arranging for those people to have COVID vaccine through us. And also there's obviously discussion about sort of more vulnerable people who perhaps are homeless or sex workers who might not otherwise be able to access it.
Okay. And Will, from a public health perspective, do you think that everyone should be offered vaccines when they go to a sexual health clinic?
Well, I think Claire's just also hit the nail on the head here, because anyone can access a sexual health clinic, but it doesn't mean that you need every vaccination. So a risk assessment will be done to see if you are either in a population group that is more likely to be exposed to a particular infection, or if the type of sex that you're having may be likely to expose you to a particular infection. For me, and I mentioned Hep B earlier on, Hep B is a really good example. So all gay and bisexual men are recommended under current government guidelines to be vaccinated and complete the full course of Hep B vaccination, as are some other groups, for example, people who are selling sex, so sex workers, but not everybody would be given a Hep B vaccination through their sexual health clinic. My personal advice, and I know we'll come on to in a little while to talk about issues around vaccine hesitancy. I'm all tongue-tied tonight. Vaccine hesitancy, but my view is that we are offered vaccines for a reason, and it's really important to have that conversation with the health staff about those vaccines. So I personally will have every vaccine that's thrown at me because there's a reason why I'm being offered it. So short answer, Phil, not everyone will be offered every single vaccine. And if you turn up at a clinic and you think that you should be offered it, then the health staff are there to help you make that decision.
Thank you. So I guess if you're listening to the podcast, you won't know, but Eleanor has now disappeared from the call. Hopefully she returns.
Hopefully, yes.
In the meantime, Claire, I'm going to give you Eleanor's last question in this section, which is,
okay.
Where she said,
Sounds like she's back.
Hello.
Is she back there?
Yeah, I am.
Yes.
There you go.
Yay.
Oh my God.
I'm so glad you're back, Eleanor.
Sorry, everything.
I thought if I was going to have to face the tears on my own.
Wait, the power's come back on. I have no idea what occurred. So I'm just going to carry on.
It's all right.
I have a question for you. Now you're back.
Yeah.
Is it important that you complete a course of vaccinations?
Yes, it is. So when companies are making vaccinations, they test them really robustly, and they know basically how many doses of vaccine you need to get the right amount of antibodies to protect you from whatever disease it is. And so after one dose of any vaccine, some people will be protected and will have enough antibodies, absolutely. But you need the relevant number of doses to get enough people protected. And as an example, hepatitis B vaccination, I remember this from years of being a medic and having to have proof of hepatitis B immunity to practice, that your antibodies can fall over time and you might need to have a booster every so often or more doses and to keep your antibodies up. And that can happen for other diseases as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question about that. And I think you guys are going to tell me off, because what happened was I started my Hep B vaccination in Brazil, and they told me after 1 month you come back. So I went back after 3 months to have the second dose. And then after that, I moved to the UK, and I just forgot about it. And years after I found out the joy of the sexual health clinics. And I went there, and I mentioned the doctor, hey, I started this process and I would like to continue in Brazil. So the doctor gave me a booster of Hep B vaccine. And then I was like, okay, what now? What's next? Because I couldn't find an appointment with the clinic again, and I started seeing my local clinic. and I done a test to see if Hep B. And the only reason I managed to get this test is because I'm from Brazil. Because I don't know, I might be wrong, but I don't know if Hep B is offered to people that is from the UK, or is it?
It is if you're a gay man, yeah, or a bisexual man or a trans woman.
Yeah.
So my question is, oh, sorry, Dr. Elena.
I was just agreeing. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, what do I do now? Because my exams came back saying that it's not reactive. It's like, I don't know if that's the word.
Yeah. So you had vaccination probably years ago. You've recently had a booster and been tested to see if you had any antibodies, and it was negative.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends is the answer. People will do different things. This is a bit of a bugbear of mine. So first of all, yeah, this is one of those things that I get cross about in the clinic.
That's why I was ready for that. It's a waste of public money.
No, not at all. No, not at all. I mean, like doctors are the last people to throw stones at people for not going to appointments and taking treatments appropriately. It's do as I say, not as I do every time. But yeah, so not at all. But what is important is that you're so when you have a booster, usually they do that to see if you can mount a response. So we know that you've had a couple of vaccines, but we're not sure whether they were effective because you only had 2 of them. And normally what you would do is give a booster and then check the level 8 to 12 weeks after the booster. So the first thing to do is go back and check if that was done. Because if it was done, say, 18 weeks after, then that may not have shown a true response. So let's imagine that you don't have any immunity and that it has all been done properly. That you would probably, there'd be one of 2 things. You would probably restart the vaccine schedule, possibly over a quicker period to make it easier for you to get all the vaccines in, because the long and the short of it is you need to get 3 in a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably what didn't happen. And then if you did that fairly quickly, you'd probably get another booster 12 months later, at which point they check your levels 8 to 12 weeks after. And if your antibodies were fine, they would leave it at that. So that's what we would do, Eleanor. I'm not sure if that's the same thing you would do.
Yeah, it's roughly the same. And quite often with someone like that, when you talk about doing it shorter, we do the massively accelerated course. You have one today, one next week, and one 2 weeks after that. Because actually it's really hard to remember to go back 6 months later to have an injection, especially if you're young and you're moving around, or you break up with someone and go to another city or whatever. To then remember to go and get your vaccine in the same clinic that you were in, I think it's actually a bit of a big ask.
Yeah.
So we would often do that, as an accelerated.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think something else is on my list for when lockdown is over. First one is booster. Second one, I would like to know who a HPV vaccine is free for. Who can take the HPV vaccine on sexual health clinics?
So Eleanor, do you want to take that one?
So in sexual health clinics, at the moment, we can give the HPV vaccine to men who have sex with men who are up to the age of 45. And the reason someone's already asked, why can't we give it over the age of 45? And it's basically about a risk-benefit ratio, that there's so much HPV in the community that the assumption is made that by the time you get to 45, you've probably had sex with so many people, not in a brood way, just in general, that you've basically already contracted the HPV virus from somewhere, and so the vaccine won't work. So it's not cost effective because you've already had it. You've already had the disease itself. We don't test people's antibodies to see whether they've had it before we give it, because there's so much HPV in the community, and it would not be cost effective for the country to do that. So up to the age of 45, you can have it. But from my perspective, that still seems amazing, because when I first started as a consultant, no one could get the vaccine unless they happened to be a girl in year 8. So, now we're vaccinating boys and girls in year 8 from 2019 onwards. And anyone who is up to the age of 25 can get it from their GP now. So they accept that you might, and that primarily, I think, brings in people where their parents have declined
Yeah.
That was, I don't know, Dr. Elena was saying about the parents' decline is something interesting as well. I don't know if I'm cutting her because I don't know when she's coming back, but I was wondering, it's like, was HPV vaccine controversial when it came out for kids? Like,
I think, yes, there was. I mean, we were having a conversation about this a couple of weeks ago that we were just talking, Eleanor, about whether it's controversial, HPV vaccination, and whether it came out as being controversial. And I think there was a little bit of controversy about it, but the way it got round from a public health perspective was because it was argued about cancer. And the initial vaccination that was put in place was just the high risk cancer types. So 16 and 18 are two types of HPV virus, and they are the ones that are associated with the genital cancers as a general rule. And so when it was first brought in, the vaccine only covered those two, and it didn't cover genital warts, which had been rolled out in other countries. So in places like Australia, they immediately rolled out the vaccine with four different types of viruses, which included the ones for genital warts, which are obviously sexually transmitted, and they have seen an absolute, like, literally a massive drop in genital warts over the last sort of 10 years or so.
Will, do you have anything to add?
Well, I mean, like Claire, I can remember when the HPV vaccine was first introduced, because it was introduced to 12 and 13-year-old young women, and it was being seen as a sex vaccine. That there were parents who were worried about what this might be facilitating. Does this mean that you're suggesting that my young daughter, as a 12 or 13-year-old, is having sex? And yet the thing is that we do actually know that there are some younger teenagers who are already starting to experiment with sex. I mean, I started experimenting with sex when I had just turned 14. Potentially was exposed to HPV. For someone like me, I would have benefited from being given that vaccination as a 12 or 13-year-old. And it took a lot of kind of unpicking from public health experts to try and convince some groups of parents that it was really important. And as Claire said, this isn't just about helping to reduce genital warts. It is about also helping to reduce cervical cancer and throat cancer and penile cancer and anal cancer. And we've seen remarkable reductions in all of these cancers in people who've been vaccinated. Yet another success story, but yet another great example of kind of unnecessarily moralizing that's prevented. Actually, that unnecessary moralizing will have led to some young women going on to get cervical cancer later on in their lives. It's absolutely shameful.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And in Australia, they, in fact, because they started much earlier than we did vaccinating using Gardasil, which is for all of them, and vaccinating boys. The reason they moved to vaccinating boys so much quicker than everybody else is they only vaccinated girls with Gardasil, and then they did, because the women were being vaccinated, but many who had sex with them did not benefit. And then said, oh, hang on a minute, we're not benefiting everybody. We need to switch to vaccinating boys. And that all happened years before it happened in the UK. And as I remember one of my exams that I did, the diploma in genitourinary medicine, one of the questions in my actual exam was, name 2 problems with the government's choice of Cervarix for the vaccination program. Because in our specialty, we all knew that only choosing the one that went against high-risk cancer and only vaccinating girls was a problem. And so it was an exam question. But we knew, and then we had to spend a long time convincing everybody else.
Yeah, it did take a long time, actually, didn't it?
It did.
A lot of work went on behind the scenes to encourage boys to be vaccinated at 15. That's only just gone in now, hasn't it? So
yeah, it's only been like 2 years.
Shameful, really, that it's taken this long.
I think it is.
It's
I think
such a
it's
powerful tool. Yeah.
It felt like again, it was one of those things where it felt like it was a homophobic policy to only vaccinate girls. It was making massive assumptions about people that, you know, in year 8, there are still plenty of people who have no idea what kind of people they fancy. They haven't really started puberty properly. They don't really get what's going on. You can't look at those people and say, oh, you look gay, I'll vaccinate you. You look straight, I won't. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Definitely can't do that.
Yeah, no, exactly. It just felt like but it also, I remember speaking about this years ago at a conference and saying, it was discriminating against anyone who had sex with someone who was older than them, anyone who had sex with someone from a different country where there was no vaccination program. So I was going through the mental work thinking, you know, what about a boy who's not vaccinated and only sleeps with women, but he goes on a stag weekend to Prague, because at that time they didn't have a vaccination program, and he has sex with someone, and then he contracts HPV, and then he gets penile cancer.
Yeah.
And he's been, you know, he basically has ended up, I mean, obviously that's a thought experiment, but it's a true fact that you have to, and also, sorry, as a separate thing, years ago, we made the same mistake with rubella. When I was at school, only girls were given the rubella vaccination at the age of 13 because congenital rubella, where the pregnant woman gives it to the baby, was a terrible thing. But they decided that it was only a problem for pregnant women, therefore they would only vaccinate girls at the age of 13 before they had sex. And they didn't vaccinate boys. So that meant they vaccinated 50% of the population, roughly, against a disease which affected 100% of the population. And the rates of congenital rubella stayed the same.
Yeah.
And then they introduced the MMR, and rates of congenital rubella went completely almost to zero because they were finally vaccinating everybody for a disease which affects everybody.
Yeah.
And I feel like they made the same,
yeah, I think it just
measles, mumps, and rubella.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So that basically it moved.
Yeah, it shows that we need to think about the whole population, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You have to think, you can't just vaccinate half the population for a disease which affects the whole population, or 90% of the population for a disease which affects 10% of the population. It's this horrible thing where if it doesn't affect, you know, a politician's family or, you know, friends or the people that the social circles they move in, that they don't understand. And anyway, I get quite passionate about vaccinations. Sorry, because it's so it's such an amazing thing that we can do to vaccinate someone against a disease so that they then don't get it. Yeah. And my, you know, completely personally, my uncle had polio and was disabled for the rest of his life because he had polio, because he was born just too early to be vaccinated. And no one in my uncle's family would ever have refused a child a polio vaccine when they came in. Because they were like, why would you let this happen to somebody when he could be vaccinated?
Yeah.
And I feel the same way about the other vaccines. Why on earth would you not take them up?
Yeah.
Back, Claire, we lost you then for a second.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. It's probably one of my children hammering the internet. Were we talking about vaccine hesitancy now?
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about vaccine hesitancy, but maybe we should look at the future of vaccines now as well, because what other vaccines there to come that people hesitate, you know, towards, you know?
Oh,
Will, do you know any new developments that we should be getting excited about, Will?
I mean, the one that I've actually been getting excited about in this week, and you know, Claire and Eleanor may not agree, or they may agree, is meningococcal B, which has been used and is used as a you know, broadly as a standard vaccination now against MenB, which if you are infected with MenB, it can go on to cause sepsis and meningitis. You know, it's serious. But actually, one of the things that is now starting to emerge is that it seems that MenB vaccination could also be preventative against gonorrhea. And given we are having massive increases in gonorrhea, particularly amongst gay and bisexual men, there is some kind of, you know, the beginnings of conversations about whether we should start doing some targeted MenB vaccinations for gonorrhea prevention. And for me, there are two exciting things about this potential. One, because it's great to be reducing gonorrhea, but secondly, we have an awful lot of gonorrhea at the moment being treated with antibiotics, and there's lots of concerns about antibiotic resistance, so antibiotic microbial resistance, AMR, as it's often called. And for me, if we can find a way of reducing gonorrhea incidence using something like the MenB vaccination, then that could also potentially contribute to doing something better around AMR. So antimicrobial resistance and gonorrhea. This is the one right now that I think is on our radar. The colleague from WHO did a presentation about this just last week, and I think it's going to be the next thing that we start kind of having debates and discussions about. So.
Do you think, Will, that the sell around a vaccine for gonorrhea will be more challenging around how we actually, given the slight controversy around HPV, which we eventually got over, do you think that's likely to be, more challenging?
I mean, Claire, look at the fight we had with PrEP. The evidence base about PrEP is so compelling, and yet it's, PrEP was licensed in the USA in 2012, and it's taken us 8 years in England only in this last 9 months, 9 to 12 months, has PrEP been commissioned. So if it's taken this long for something like PrEP to be approved and research funding to go into it, then imagine the fight, the absolute bloody fight we will have around gonorrhea.
Yeah,
I suppose sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I suppose the angle of AMR, reducing resistance to antibiotics would help, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that. No, I was just going to say, I mean, that in general, in the UK, we've not had a good track record with vaccinations. I mean, for hepatitis B, the World Health Organization recommended it at birth for, I think, decades before we implemented it for babies. So but I'm saying I didn't know that about MenB, and I'm actually really excited because I've seen a couple of people in hospital with gonorrhea sepsis, really, really unwell, who both recovered, thankfully. It's possible, gonorrhea sepsis, because it's related to meningitis, so you can get sepsis from it. And with increasing antibiotic resistance, there's this horrible, for me, spectre that we might end up with people with gonorrhea-related sepsis in hospital on a more regular basis, which would just be awful. And then the idea we might have a vaccine that could prevent that and also help with antibiotic resistance in general would just be brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
guys, I just want to ask one last question. I think we mentioned that before, but I just want to repeat it just so people that tune in now can be sure. All the vaccines that we mentioned, can they be taken by someone who's living with HIV?
Yes.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have about 15 minutes to the end of the interview, and we still have the system games and some questions to do. So I'll ask in the next questions just so we try to go a bit quicker, please. Okay. Unfortunately.
I did say that I was trying not to mention COVID or anything to do with COVID, but we can't talk about, we can't actually have a whole episode on vaccinations and not mention it. So according to Public Health England, vaccine provision for men who have sex with men has gone down because of the pandemic. So Claire, what do you think we can do to address this?
Well, I think there's a combination of things. So I think, talking to colleagues across the country, and I don't know if you experienced this, Eleanor, that lots of sexual health service were sacrificed to help towards the COVID pandemic, which is fine for a short period of time. But now we need to pressurize to get them back up to normal in terms of capacity, in terms of the number of patients we can get through. So people were redeployed in every service, nurses and doctors, but lots of nurses were redeployed, and that meant that there wasn't as many staff to deliver sexual health vaccines. So we have to pressure to get back to normal staffing levels in sexual health services, and that's both clinicians and organisations around sexual health delivery, but also patient groups like yourselves that are advocating for patients. We have to pressure.
I completely agree, and it's as ever there are wider problems out there in terms of people haven't had vaccinations, they haven't been in for treatment for things, they've ended up giving an infection to somebody else because they couldn't access the clinic to get antibiotics. And yeah, I agree. We need to, like in my service now, people have come back off redeployment, but we've still got people shielding. Which is obviously that's right, and they should be shielding, but it has put pressure on the service in terms of patients being able to be seen.
And like lots of people are getting the COVID vaccine at the moment, but we're still seeing a lot of like hesitancy with the vaccine. So how do we address that?
So Phil, there've been lots of conspiracy theories going around about COVID. All of the conspiracies about Bill Gates putting millions and millions of pounds worth of funding into the vaccine, and then we're going to all get 5G kind of firing out of our hats. I've got to say, tomorrow morning, actually, first thing tomorrow morning, I'm going for my first COVID vaccination, and I'm really happy because for this reason, if those conspiracy theories are true, I also understand that Dolly Parton put a lot of money into vaccine development, and if after my vaccine tomorrow morning I can sing Jolene at karaoke. Absolutely worth it. I would be very, very happy. I don't want the big boobs, but being able to
I wouldn't mind. Yeah.
Great. but joking aside, conspiracy theories are really causing a lot of damage. And I think the way we've been dealing with vaccine hesitancy has been really bad. Part of the way our government has responded to COVID has contributed to some of the hesitancy, bad information, misinformation, how we communicate. If you look at World Health Organization guidance on how to do communications during an outbreak control, the government's broken pretty much every rule there is in the rule book about doing public health communications. So no wonder there are people who are scared and frightened and confused. Really briefly, Phil, how we deal with vaccine hesitancy and COVID vaccine hesitancy is that there's no point someone like me spending any time trying to convince the people who are absolutely convinced this is a conspiracy. I'm not going to change their minds. I'm not going to draw them round. It's the people who are scared and confused and have misinformation who we can help. And that means people like us need to spend time with those people. Putting social media posts with myth busts on the things that are stupid to think about vaccine does not help win those people over. We need to invest time and energy. We need events like tonight to spend time with people and listen to their concerns, rather than saying that their concerns are mad and stupid. That doesn't win people over. And I've yet to see any online post by all of the people I know trying to tackle vaccine hesitancy that will win any of those people over, particularly with name calling, telling those people that they're stupid and thick. It doesn't work. We've still got to do.
So I agree, and in fact, I saw that makes me think of something that I saw literally this week, which was unrelated to coming here. That someone on another Facebook group I'm on posted saying that they've been asked to go for their vaccine. This wasn't a doctor's Facebook group; it was another thing. Saying I've been asked to go for my vaccine, but I'm not 50 yet, and I'm a bit worried that I've been asked. Why should I go? And I just normally don't post on things like that, but I just replied saying, look, I'm a doctor, and I don't know any doctors that have said no. Just have it. Just have the vaccine. And then I read the other comments, so I was interested. I wanted to see if there was anyone else out there saying, don't have it, you'll be chipped, whatever. And there were loads of people saying, yeah, you should definitely have it. Yeah, just go ahead, just have it. Anyway, the next day she posted a picture of her vaccine certificate, this woman, on the Facebook group. And I just thought, oh my goodness. It wasn't just me. It was like so many people were saying, you should go ahead. I've had mine. It didn't really hurt. I'm fine. I'm a nurse, do it. I'm a doctor. I'm a post-it, whatever. And then, but I think you're exactly right, Will. That's exactly how you're describing. That wasn't somebody saying you should all be vaccinated. It wasn't someone being mean. It was just a whole load of normal people replying to someone's genuine question without being rude or horrible or, and I know that doesn't always happen on social media. And so I think she was probably quite lucky, but that's what we need. We need people going out there just saying, and I know lots of my colleagues have posted pictures of themselves being vaccinated to really prove that,
it's happened. Yeah,
that it's happened. But I didn't pose with my shirt off because I felt that it was important that I was fully clothed.
Yeah, I was also fully clothed when I was vaccinated.
Were you? Funny.
Yeah.
Fun there. Maybe I should go in with a bra.
Yeah. Yeah. Why not?
My last question for Will. What would you say to people that are worried about the vaccine because of side effects?
Look, every medication can potentially have a side effect. Every vaccine can have a side effect. Paracetamol can potentially have a side effect. So I would say, let's not pretend that there are no side effects. Some people will get mild side effects. Prepare for the day after the day, the period after you're having your vaccine, and the day after, maybe you're going to need to rest a bit, spend some, take a little bit of time out of work or studying or looking after your family. Very, very few people who are being vaccinated against COVID are having serious side effects. Very few people, and believe me, as someone who was infected with COVID a year ago and has been living with long COVID for 12 months, that has had a massive impact on my health and well-being. It's worth the minimal risk of having a side effect from the vaccination than it is for getting infected and even getting mild COVID. It really is worth getting that vaccination.
Go on. Sorry.
I was going to say I would agree with all of that, but also that one of the other things that I've said to some people who don't seem to really understand how vaccines work at all, which is not their fault, because why would the average person know, is that my genuine belief is if you have side effects, it means your immune system is doing what it's supposed to do. Like, in a way, you should welcome the slight side effects, the slightly sore arm, maybe a slight fever, because that means that the vaccine is doing what it's supposed to do and your body's making antibodies that will protect you in the future. And, just try. So, when small children go for their vaccines, we're always told to give them Calpol afterwards. It's just a thing. You have a vaccination, you feel a bit poorly, it hurts, you have a fever, have some paracetamol.
That's
and I think, being more matter of fact about that. And also, absolutely, Will, that you're not going to then get COVID, which is...
Yeah.
Huge bonus.
Yeah.
Huge bonus.
Okay, so...
Dale, do we have any questions from the... Also, I feel like... Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing. Go on.
Yeah, so... Oh, we do. Do trials exist, and if so, can people apply to participate? What stage is that at?
So, Matt, there are not currently UK trials. There's a trial going in Australia. And if you would like to message us at hello@prepster.info, we'll put that email address up into the box now. If you email us tomorrow, I'll send you a couple of links, the information that we have. So hello@prepster.info.
I guess we could take one more.
Do we have one more, Dale?
Oh, we did that one. How about this one?
I think we've had this one too.
The new brands.
Okay, I think that might be it, actually.
Yeah, looks like it.
All right.
So please email us at outreach@prepster.info. We'll put that in the comments now. So we're also going to share a link with the information of everything we talked about vaccinations, and that will go into the comments too. And now it's time for the tier system. Take it away, Pedro.
Tier system time. Before we start, I just want to give you the rules. As you might already know, the tier system is a game that involves answering very, very personal questions about yourself. There are 4 tiers, and the higher the tier, the more personal the question. We want to normalize and destigmatize talking about our sex lives and sexual health, and that's why we created it. In the beginning of the interview, we were talking about judgment, and I think the more we talk about ourselves. The more we disclose, the more comfortable we feel about our sexuality, because it is okay, you know. And the first question is for Claire. The second question is for Eleanor. The third question is for Will. And the other three are for the audience, if we have people willing to participate. And the questions will be randomly picked from this beautiful hat with our the brand upside down right now. And to participate, guys, click the link where that we're sharing right now in the comment box. Lots of links. The last one will be for participating, but be aware that your face and your voice will show up on the stream. It's a come first serve kind of affair, so the first ones to enter are the ones who will join. And don't forget to open the link on Google Chrome. And if you're accepted on the stream, please mute the Facebook tab to avoid echo. The last rule is you only win the prize if you answer the question. So Phil, why don't you show them the prize? Do you have the prize with you, Phil?
I still have the prizes, yes. We have 3 dishes from last week.
A dish bomb.
We have 3 cock rings. I believe all the lube is gone. The lube went last week.
The lube went. That's all right. So the first one is for Claire. Claire.
Yeah.
It's coming. Let's see what's coming. Okay, it is a tier 3 question, so it's a quite high level, and it is.
It's a tier 3, did you say?
Yes, it's tier 3.
Okay, right, okay.
What body parts do you like to suck? Genitals don't count.
I'm so sorry.
Why can I not say genitals? I'm sorry.
You can say genitals. You can say genitals, but
okay.
there must be something else.
I love an earlobe. I love an earlobe.
Okay.
Totally love an earlobe. Nipples are nice.
Mm-hmm.
They're not a genital, really, are they?
I don't know. I wouldn't say so.
No, I'm not into toes. Quite frankly. Yeah, and genitals, obviously. I can't think of anything else.
Thank you. That's great. That's fine. Now it's for you, Eleanor.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what's coming next. I'm nervous for you. Are you nervous?
Not going to lie, a little bit.
Yeah.
But you got a tier 2. You got a tier 2 question. That's a good one. It's easy to answer. Do you cover up your bedding towels, or you don't mind painting sheets? Your sheets.
Oh, no, I genuinely own a specific sex blanket.
You have what specific sex blanket?
Yeah,
I love it.
Prepared enough for sex. I need to prepare more.
I do have.
I need a sex blanket. Why don't I have one?
Yeah, they're amazing. They're washable. You can put them in the tumble dryer. Put them on. Yeah.
That's great. What a good idea.
Great.
And a hint for everybody watching: get yourself a sex blanket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know? And Will, that's your turn now. Is it tier 3?
What?
That is my favorite question from the bunch. I did it myself. What your ex could have done better in bed?
Oh, that's a tough one.
What my ex
I'm so glad I didn't get that one.
Yeah, me too. My God.
Would have been to have had a sex blanket.
Yes.
There you are.
Oh.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to ask for the audience if they have anyone to join, and you may stay with us. But I understand that we are running a bit late. It's 1 hour now, and if you have to go, please, don't hold back. Would you like to stay to watch the if we have any other people
Yeah,
to
definitely.
Yeah,
yes,
definitely.
right?
I can stay for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dale, do we have anyone willing to join? I didn't hear anyone joining. Let me check. Let me check my.
No, we have no one. There's
People
no
are still really nervous, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
One shy.
It's a shame.
Oh, guys, you're gonna miss, a douche. Gonna miss cock rings. All the good stuff.
Oh my God.
Claire and Eleanor, if douche bulbs and cock rings might not be the prizes you want, but we would be really happy to send you both one of our t-shirts.
Oh my God, yes!
No, I would love a t-shirt. That would be amazing.
I would love a t-shirt.
That
would be
okay.
fantastic.
Yeah, I would really like that. Thank you.
Thank
Get
you
in
so
touch
much.
with you then to ask information. I guess that's it then. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. PNP is a space in which we can... Oh, no, wait. Have I jumped something, Phil? I feel like I jumped something.
It's okay. We can go 5 minutes. People are prepared.
Yes. But...
Thank
you. Thank you. I'll try to relax here. Dr. Claire and Dr. Eleanor, I would like to thank you so much for participating.
You're welcome.
You've been brilliant. Thank you for being such a good sport with the tier system as well. And to give me all the tips for my vaccination plan after lockdown as well.
Get it done. Get it sorted.
Thank you so much.
We want a picture of your vaccine certificate.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I will. Yes, tell me the group. Yeah. Tell me which group I should post it. Anyway, thank you so much. Dale is now going to remove you from this stream.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Nice to see you, Eleanor. Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
So Phil, tell me what you learned today. Do you have any growth?
I didn't know that there were other vaccines that you could get from a sexual health clinic if you're living with HIV. That was something brand new for me. What about you?
Yeah, Dr. Claxon said something like that really stayed with me, because it was that when she mentioned about PrEP. I know we're talking about vaccination, but she mentioned about PrEP and all the tools they have in sexual health clinics support. And to her, she said it felt like every new HIV diagnosed, it feels like it's a failure of the system. And I relate to that a lot, because we have so much stuff to give support, so yeah, that's something that I learned. And also, of course, as I mentioned, my HPV and what to do with my hepatitis B, boost.
We were a bit lost.
These are things I learned. Pardon?
We were lost on what to do as we were planning this, so we thought we'd ask, but it's fine.
What about you? What have you learned?
I just said.
Oh, you said?
Yes.
Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, and unfortunately, guys, then today is all we have time for. PNP is a space in which we can discuss different topics within sexual health that we don't normally talk about. The first episode is on our Facebook already, and as soon as we finish recording this one will be there. We have 4 more episodes this season, so please join us next week at 7 p.m. as we are going to talk about what it's like to be young and living with HIV.
Thank you all so much for watching us. It was great to have you all with us on the second edition of PNP. We can't wait to see you next week.
Yes.